The man I'm about to speak to was an absolute beast in the NFL trenches. But what does it take to stay that big, that strong, and that sharp? We're about to find out. Welcome to Balls Deep, a humorous yet informative medical show with a mission of optimizing your performance in the bedroom, the bathroom, and the boardroom. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Pazona, a board-certified urologist and CEO of Pazona MD. We hope you enjoy. Now, let's jump right in. Stream team, welcome back. Today on Balls Deep, we go behind the curtain of a professional NFL All-Pro, Mr. Brad Hopkins. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Absolutely, man. Well, we've gotten to know each other here in Nashville, and you played for over a decade, first with the Houston Oilers, then the Tennessee Titans, and through that transition. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it'd be neat because I don't think the public understands like what really it takes to, in terms of your fitness, your eating, your lifting regimen. As a pro athlete, I don't think we have any concept of what you guys have to do to stay at that level of athleticism. So if it's all right with you, I thought we'd just kind of jump right in.
Let's go.
Balls deep.
Well, let's tell us a little bit about your sort of journey into the NFL from more the health perspective and sort of fitness, because, you know, you didn't just come out of the womb, you know, a 6'3" beast. You know, walk us through kind of what early childhood was like, starting to get into playing ball, and how that sort of transitioned towards professional life.
Yeah, great question. Football wasn't my career path by design. Mm-hmm. I fashioned myself as a basketball player, and I really wasn't disciplined enough to stay committed and disciplined to, you know, what it would take to be a football player. I actually used football as a way to stay in shape for basketball season when I was in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I started to get more attention catching a football than catching passes in the low post, if you know what I mean. And it just became a better opportunity for me to get a better education, playing Division I, and having long conversations with my father about what would be the best career path. We just kind of, you know, settled in the fact that the bird in the hand beats two in the bush. I was getting a lot more notoriety being a football player than I was a basketball player, even though my passion was basketball. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed to be the thing that I needed to hone my skills the best, to give me the best opportunity. Now, the difference was I started out as a tight end, like I just said, catching the ball, okay, right? And it was the lack of discipline and the lack of commitment that actually grew me out of the position, basically eating my way to tackle.
Okay.
So I committed, got my scholarship to Illinois as a tight end, and it wasn't but maybe 2 weeks later that the offensive line coach was wringing his hands together and said, yeah, bring that big booty boy down here. And let's teach him how to pass set, you know. So I remember calling my dad, Joe, and telling him, hey, look, Dad, they moved me from tight end to tackle. And he's like, well, are you going to be able to play? And surprisingly, I think that they saw the potential in me because of my size, because of maybe me being a more inline blocking type tight end to make the transition. So as much as it wasn't a plan of mine, I just kind of like got in line with some people that were doing it at a high level and learned what I could on the fly to transition from tight end to tackle.
So going back to the sort of the high school, you commented that you played football to stay in shape for basketball.
Yeah.
What was it about football workouts? Because I didn't play, and I don't think a lot of people listening may have played. What was it about football conditioning that was different?
I think besides being a Marine, it's probably one of the toughest things that you'd ever do. You know, playing football competitively, right? Because there is technique, because there are so many things that you have to learn to be safe and be effective. And I wanted that layer of toughness. You know, I wanted to be able to say that that's something I could accomplish, right? Being in the trenches, being a guy that can be almost in like guerrilla warfare on the football field, and really being physical, because that's what football is. Football is a physical, violent sport. And unlike basketball, you have to have a mindset to be able to do that. Not taking anything away from basketball players competitively and how hard it actually is. But when you're in a team environment like that, the level of accountability is different, because we're all doing so many different things. There are 4 or 5 different positions on either side of the football that all have to work in unison for the offensive or defensive units to be effective, right? So I was but a cog, but an important cog to make sure that we were all successful and give ourselves the best chance to win.
it almost sounds like a military, aspect to it, right? Because
Right.
not only the mental toughness and the violence behind it, but like you said, it's units working in a certain way, and that's just a little bit different than some other sports.
100%. We likened training camp to boot camp. That's probably one of the most physical, rigorous situations you'll go into, especially when you just enter the military, right? So imagine going to college and then to the pro level to where you have 3 and 4 weeks of that kind of training, to where it's grueling. The temperatures are just disgusting because you want it to be that way.
Yeah.
You want it to be hot. You want it to be hard. So in that way, the rest of the season becomes easier to you because you're in shape, you're in condition. But sometimes a less mature guy, someone that really doesn't understand exactly what needs to go into being successful, you kind of take shortcuts, or you just don't, have the level of commitment that it takes to make your job easier. So it wasn't until I got into maybe years 3, 4, and 5 where I understood you've got to come into training camp in shape. Don't use training camp to get into shape because you're missing some things, right? So that's where an off season of understanding what it's going to take for you to be able to get through a grueling fall and a grueling season, you start taking advantage then to get yourself and your body. You're mentally prepared to go out there and do whatever it takes to get the job done.
I want to get into some of the what real life was like, but the first thing that's jumping out of me is how much of this is mental. I mean, this is a mental grind, and it's almost as if you're preparing as much for that than anything else.
Absolutely. I had a great coach tell me that mental is the physical is 4:1. We spent more time getting our minds ready than we did our bodies. Because first off, you got to know what you're doing. So understanding the playbook, understanding play design, understanding what your role is, that's important. Because if you don't understand that, then you're out there, you're doing a whole bunch of movements that are probably unnecessary. But then, of course, there's always the physical. There is that one element to it. But there is so much more that went into classroom study, went into obviously getting yourself mentally prepared. And I think that as my career grew, I became more confident mentally at what I was capable of doing. And therefore, I think I excelled as I started to have those small wins here or there, playing well against somebody that is extraordinarily hard to beat, right?
Yeah.
And, just being mentioned in light of, hey, this guy's pretty good, or you really need to prepare yourself because that guy right there, he's going to bring his lunch pail and you got to have your hard hat on or it's going to be an all day sucker for you, So, I took a lot of instruction from the guys that had done it way before I had and had a lot more success than I ever had. And it just allowed me to then start building my own rapport, right? Building my own level of confidence and then taking that onto the football field and then into life, to become the person I am.
Yeah. No, and we're going to get into in a future episode what life after football and all the lessons you learned. But, it's as you're saying that, it makes me think of like, as a casual sports fan, we watch two guys going at it on TV and you're like, man, how's that old cat beating this young pup? And it's up here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that goes into you learn a lot more experiencing things. You can't just maybe say reading or studying it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not taking anything away from those people that commit themselves to research and to reading up on things, watching film, but getting out there and doing it, performing the tasks that you're asked to do, and then putting those 10,000 hours into it so now you've mastered it. That's the most important part. So up here, understanding exactly what you're supposed to be able to do, and then you do it over and over and over again, then it makes you really good at what you're doing. And it's that experience that then ties into everything else that you're doing to make you a successful person.
It's that boring daily stuff that leads to the
monotonous, bro. It's just, golly.
Yep.
But some of the best coaches, they are repetitive. They do repeat themselves because they want it to become habit for you.
Yes.
They don't want you sitting out there thinking and guessing and wondering. So that way it's almost blindfolded. You can go out there and do the job, right? I mean, I played alongside of a guy for 10 years who's wearing a gold jacket nowadays. His name's Bruce Matthews. We stopped communicating orally years ago because we had so many reps together that we would almost understand exactly every situation because we'd almost seen it all, playing that long together. So it's almost like a husband and wife type deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he's the wife.
Yeah. I hope he's not listening. Actually, I hope
we'll
he
see.
is.
We'll see. I'll let you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if I can make it like a corollary to health, I mean, it's similar to the daily grind of putting the right food in your body and just getting up and going to the gym and getting to bed on that. It's all that boring stuff that leads to those long-term results. I think it's too easy for people who are not where they want to be, whether it's in the world of athleticism or health, and there's obviously a crossover, they go, oh, you're lucky, Brad. You were born with these skills. I don't have that. Or, oh, Joe, it's easier for you to lose weight. I can't do that. But it's like, no, I mean, it's just what you didn't see were the years of that boring ass shit you were just talking about in life. And it doesn't matter what it is, but that's what makes the difference. And the older we get, the more you figure that out. You're like, if there wasn't some magic pill or surprise, it's the person who can do the boring shit over and over and over again more often than the next person who's the winner.
Yeah, it actually takes someone at that age to be really in tune with his environment and his body to understand exactly the things that you just talked about.
Yeah.
Because I did take for granted the fact that I'm 23, 24, 25, 26 years old, and I can recover from all these things.
Yeah.
But as I got up there in age, Joe, I'm in my 30s playing the game, and recovery was a little bit harder than it was when I was younger. Playing 13 years, bro, that's a long time to play.
Yeah.
But that's when you start having to use your mind more so than your body.
Yes.
And also having your body prepared before you even actually got out there. So it does come down to diet and exercise, getting your rest, right? And then not using a whole bunch of unneeded movements, to get where you need to go. You can get from A to Z in a straight line versus going A to B to C to D to E to F, G, all through the alphabet when you just go right where you need to go.
Yeah.
And it took some time and the experience that I've actually, went through to understand exactly how to be efficient, and therefore it showed in the results.
Yeah. No, and I think we hear stories of athletes like LeBron who invests literally millions of dollars in his body and his recovery and rest.
Absolutely.
Let's dial back just for the listener's sake here. When you were putting on muscle and strength, walk us through like how much would you eat and what was your lifting looking like? Give people an idea of the sort of weight you were pushing and the amount of food that you had to eat to maintain that weight to be at your, we'll call it your physical prime.
Yeah, completely accidental. I remember being 275 pounds and moving from tackle to tight end, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And at that time, you didn't see a whole bunch of 300-pounders that were really athletic. So I'm thinking I'm 25 pounds away. So guess what? Give me another one of those Happy Meals, But it really wasn't, my intent to gain the weight the wrong way.
Yeah.
I probably could have gained the weight the right way if I had watched my proteins, did more of a study into my caloric intake and really kind of getting my body better that way, because I had a lot of unneeded pounds. At one point in time, Joe, I was 346 pounds when I played.
Wow.
I probably could have done without 40 of that and been an even better guy, because it did affect my stamina. Carrying that much weight, it made me tired. I really wasn't in as good a shape as I could have been.
Sure.
And as I got older in age and started bringing my weight down, I started realizing, hey, I can play the fourth quarter just as well as I did the first quarter because I'm not exhausted. And when you're tired, they always say fatigue makes cowards of us all, right? You get tired and you start forgetting about technique. You lose focus. You're just trying to get through. I remember hands on knees during TV timeouts, just like gassed, or even being in a drive and just hoping something happened to stop the clock so we can get just a few minutes of breath.
Yeah.
But then as you get older, you understand, hey, look, if you are in shape, which is what it takes, if you are doing the things right during the week, then the games are easy.
Yeah. I love you sharing that because it brings some corollaries to real life, right? Number one, when you're a young cat, you can get away with a lot, right?
Heck yeah.
And you don't think about it, and you can accidentally put on muscle eating like crap.
You can.
Right?
Yeah.
And also I imagine it was a little different time. I mean, now things are so dialed in with science and stats and everything is dialed in. I'm sure these young kids coming in, they may not all follow it, but I'm sure all these teams have these programs where they're tracking those, but wasn't always the case.
Yeah. The programs are a lot different nowadays.
Yeah.
One, you're asking most of these kids to specify in a skill set, right? I remember going to college and asking the coaches, they were recruiting me, can I play basketball too? And they were like, well, no, the seasons overlap. And that's probably the way they would like it, because their focus is basketball.
Yep.
The other coach's focus is football. They don't necessarily see the cross-pollination unless you start thinking about, the different muscles, the different things that you're learning or being able to do playing multiple sports, which is a benefit. But for the most part, nowadays, programs aren't what they used to be. There was an off season. you know? And a lot of times you didn't see the guys that you were playing with for a few months. But nowadays, I mean, you're in there is no off season.
Yeah.
You know, especially in football professionally. You know, you have organized team activities, OTAs is what we like to call them. And that happens at least 2 or 3 times before you get into training camp, which gives you the opportunity to work with each other. You know, it's not like back in the day. You're going to hear me say that a lot, back in the day. To where once the season was over, you didn't see that guy until training camp. You know, you just kind of went off and did your own things. Yeah. But nowadays, it's a lot more organized. There's a lot more time to fill working with each other because it is a year-round thing by process.
Yeah. And better systems, right? And,
100%.
And better systems lead to better results.
Yes.
And that's even something you kind of alluded to earlier was, another corollary. Here you were a professional athlete. This was your job. And in the moment, of course, you're a younger kid, but you saw, even at that level of athleticism, how important rest and the right food and the right training regimen mattered. Even though on TV we looked at you and just thought of you as this god who's on TV and this mountain of a man.
I get that a lot, being a god.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Although hanging around Micah, I'm sure that it beat you down a little bit. But
no, that's a great point that you make, because I remember when I was younger, staying up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then getting up at 7 and trying to do my day. Versus nowadays, sometimes I'm waiting for 9, 10 o'clock to come around so I can just say, hey, look, it's time for me to go to bed.
Yeah.
Get your full 7 to 8 hours in. You feel better in the morning. You feel more focused.
Yeah.
And, that just takes age to realize that. I'm almost a double nickel here in a couple of years, few months. And I look forward to those opportunities to kind of go to bed, get a good night's sleep, and be able to attack the next day, because I do have that kind of the right mindset, the right focus, the right energy, to finish an entire day.
Yeah. What was it like, Brad, the environment around you? Obviously there's your story, but you were around a whole bunch of other guys going through this as well. So what was the locker room attitude about strength training and eating? Give us an idea of what was it really like behind the scenes when it came to what did I put in my body? How did I lift, and maybe the variations? I'm sure you saw a variety.
As a younger player, you're relying on what the team has done to make sure you get those things done. Mm-hmm. There's a strength staff. There's a nutrition staff. There are trainers. There are people that are employed to make sure you are the best athlete that you can be. Mm-hmm. Now, as you get older, you start realizing some things about yourself, or maybe you see somebody else doing something differently that you say, hey, look, I like to incorporate that into my preparation and do some of those things. Like you talk about LeBron. Yeah. Russell Wilson, another guy that spends millions of dollars on getting his body right and making sure that he's ready to go physically and mentally. So you do start to do more of those things on your own as you get older. But when you're a younger player and you're distracted by being young, you know what I mean? You tend to kind of stray and do things that, that you don't necessarily have to do. But then there's that staff that I mentioned that keeps you to task, that holds you accountable. Mm-hmm. Because we did work out as a unit, as an offensive line. And we did have a strength coach that made sure that we hit certain benchmarks, whether it came to strength level or conditioning, things like that. And we were, like a lot of people, tested on those things. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't lie. Yeah. When I test you against everybody else, you can actually see who put the work in and who didn't put the work in.
Yeah. And I think that is such a powerful message, because a lot of people, quote, work out, think they eat healthy and go, oh, doc, I'm not getting any results. If you're not tracking your numbers, you're not going to get the results you expect. And here you had data and accountability, two things that people lack, I think, in everyday health. And I imagine as you've transitioned to the post-NFL life, a little bit harder. You don't have that strength coach pushing you, Brad, you don't have that necessary person planning out your meals, checking your macros, and, hey, did you go get that, that Happy Meal the other day? You don't have that accountability, and tracking that data, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. But having done it, Joe, it allowed me then as an older person to realize what I did that was effective.
Yes.
And then you kind of grow from there,
yes.
So now I know how to stretch. Mm-hmm. Now I know how to work out, because I've had counting college, almost 18 years of learning how my body works and what best to do to get the best results. So I don't necessarily need a trainer to teach me things. Now, I would like a workout buddy or someone that actually does hold you accountable, because in those days when you don't feel like doing it, when you're just like, oh, man, I think I'm going to go home. And then that guy calls you and says, hey, you ready to hit the gym?
Yes.
You're like, man, I can't let him outwork me.
Yep.
You know, when I go to the gym nowadays, I got this guy. He's probably in his late 70s.
Oh, wow.
And, I work out with a lot of guys that are like that.
Yeah.
And he comes out and he says, just checking in with you. Because every time we see each other working out, he just wants me to know that he's here, that he's putting the work in, and I do the same thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he knows when I'm not there too, though. It's like, hey, man, you missed the last couple of days. Where were you yesterday? You know, I'm like, oh, I had something going on late. I had to change my schedule. I came into the gym, later, which might be true, or maybe not be true. But the point is, when people see you, putting in the work, putting in the effort, to maintain like that, especially at my age and at their age. It's cool because we develop a relationship like that,
Well, that's so cool that you've really taken that NFL mentality and it's carried on to your post NFL life, right? And I think that's so key because we're much less likely willing to disappoint a friend or someone else, whereas we'll disappoint ourselves all the time. We can always come up with excuses as to not do it, but that guy, just that simple little thing. That is huge. What a blessing that guy's in your life, and what a great lesson we could all learn.
Totally. I would say also that level of accountability, playing offensive line, because if I didn't do my job, somebody got hurt.
Yeah.
If I got the quarterback sacked, someone hit him square in the back as he's about to throw the football, and it was my fault. That raises a different level.
That's a level of guilt.
Right?
That's like few of us can understand.
Exactly. I'm also not only responsible to protecting the quarterback, but I'm also responsible to the guy to my right and the guy to my left. So that level of accountability taught me to be there for the people that, that mattered most in those situations, and basically in life too. So I've also taken that from the football field to, the regular sector to say, hey, look, if you're relying on me to do something, I'm going to do it the best I can.
Yeah.
And that's where hard work comes in.
Absolutely. Well, man, this has been awesome. I would love to dive a little bit more into the post NFL life with you if you're willing to chat for a few more minutes.
No.
If this guy tells me no, I guess we're shit out of luck and the episode's over. So, this has been awesome. This is, really appreciate Brad coming on and, just being so candid and showing us a little peek behind the curtain of what it takes to be at that elite level. Cause the rest of us, we don't really understand that. And then looking forward to diving into, life afterwards and how that looks for you.
Looking forward to it.
So awesome, man. Well, thank you very much. So Stream Team, Brad gave us a little bit of inside info on the NFL, and you're just going to have to stay tuned for another week to see how this man is still looking so good, so strong, and now killing it in life outside the NFL. Look forward to seeing you next week. You got to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. So until next time, show yourself a little bit more love and grace. We're all works in progress, and these are opportunities to grow. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Balls Deep. If you'd like to join our Stream team of listeners, please click the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. For more information about our practice, Pazona MD, please visit PazonaMD.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice. The show does not constitute the practice of medicine. No doctor-patient relationship is formed through this podcast or any of the social media channels related to this show. The use of this information is at the user's own risk. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.